next session is going to be on franchising and third-party management. And steering that session, we have Ms. Babette Märzheuser-Wood, who is an expert in franchising. She's going to be moderating today's panel. And joining her on stage, we have Bani Haddad, who is the founder and managing director of Aleph Hospitality, Mr. Greg Osteen, the CEO of United Hospitality Management, Mr. Jerry Zhu, founder and CEO of La Vie Hotels and Resorts, Mr. Panos Loupasis, market managing director, Türkiye, Middle East and Africa for Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, and Mr. Tapan Piplani, Chief Operating Officer, Middle East and CIS for Valor Hospitality. Welcome your panelists to the stage.
Well, welcome. I think people are still finishing their lunch, but we've got a lot to talk about, so we will kick off. So I'm Babette, and I'm Global Head of Franchising at Dentons. I've been in franchising for a very long time, more than 25 years, both as a lawyer and also as a franchise consultant. I work, for example, with Kempinski Hotels on the beautiful franchise I have by the Dubai Mall that I'm sure you've all heard about, and I'm very lucky to have a very experienced panel here of hospitality industry veterans. You've been introduced, so we won't repeat that. We'll jump straight into the topic. We want to debate today whether the franchise model is better than the management model, and if so, how is it better? So we are going to look, first of all, of course, at the money. People worry about fees, right? Do you end up with double fees if you move to franchise? Because you need to pay the franchise fee, and you need to bring in a management company on a white label basis to operate your asset or set up your own asset management branch, which is also going to cost you money. So very lucky we have some really strong white label managers here today that have lived this model and who can share some thoughts on, is it double fees, yes or no? I'm just going to start with you, Bani, as you're looking at me and sitting there.
Sorry, shall I stand up or? Thank you. I think it's a great question that all of us on the panel face, at least the white label or independent operators. That's the first question we always face. Am I going to pay double the fees? And the reality, yes, the owner does pay two sets of fees, a royalty fee and the management fee. Royalty fee goes for the use of the brand, and the management fees for us. But that would be, really the question that is typically coming for first-time owners or owners with a unique experience of hotels managed by the brands. The entire value proposition of a third-party operator is not in the fees. The entire value proposition is in the profitability, is in what can be done to save on the expenses, which includes, by the way, the centralized service charges or program fees that come from the brand. But also, I always like to say there's a big push from us on the revenue side as well. Having come from the brand side, I always say, and I always tell the guys that are still working for the brands, which general manager who's working for a brand would go and challenge his head office, his global sales team, tell them, I don't have enough business from you? Very difficult. Maybe some do it, but very, very rare and very difficult. So it's not that we do it better than the brand. It's just that because we have more time, we're more focused, we have less hotels, and that's how the concept of paying double fees is not relevant, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is completely different. There was a study a few months ago, I think 6 or 8 months ago, released by consultancy company, international one. They're showing how in Europe, the impact on the bottom line is 10 to 15% positive when it's operated by a white label. And again, I repeat, it's not because we do things differently, better, we do just things differently.
I've also heard that from clients where we've worked to convert from managed to franchise. The beauty is you keep the brand on the hotels, you keep the consistency, but you can make those savings. So Panos, we were chatting earlier and you were saying, yes, for sure, there are the double fees, but there's also some flexibility, right, on the Wyndham side as well when working in this model.
Yeah, so there is ways to do it. So I would say if an owner independently, individually approaches, let's say, a brand for a franchise contract, plus a white label management company for the management services, and then separately approaches another brand for a direct management contract, naturally option B will be cheaper because of the individual approaches, yeah? Because collectively the two structures will come eventually above the direct single management offer from, let's say, an international brand. But what we do typically is we work with the white label, and funny enough, we are already working with Valor and United and Aleph, and looking forward to working also with Jay. And the way we do it is we connect, and we have actually a special fee structure which is reduced and allows actually, if you want, the cumulative structure between the white label management offer and the franchise offer from the brand to be competitive against a direct management offer from another operator who might be discussing with the owner. So it requires a special structure, which we already use, and that's how we address, if you want, the issue of having full fees applicable to an owner. We understand the needs of certain owners to basically work with two entities in line with their needs. So we have a special structure that allows, let's say, this collaboration to be viable for the owners.
So that's really good news, I think, for owners. So there is a special package available from franchise brands such as Wyndham, hopefully from others as well, where you use this particular model. So I'm just going to give Tapan a chance to comment as well.
Babette, if I may just add to what Bani was referring to earlier. Firstly, Babette had promised us that this will not be the first question of the day, because we always find it difficult to move beyond this in negotiations. However, adding to what Bani said, it is really not about the fees, because even if you pay 1.5 to 2 basis points more to the operator for looking after an asset where you spend $1 billion, at the end of the day, it does not matter if we are going to add 8 to 9 basis points to your net profitability. And not only in Europe, but we've been, many of us have been operating assets here in the region now. And over the last 3 fiscal years, post-COVID, we've actually shown that assets that we've taken on and managed, we've actually added that kind of numbers to the bottom line and to the net profit. And it's a combination of growing the revenue and making sure we optimize the cost. So at the end of the day, the question is, do the owners make more money? Not if they pay more fees, and yes, they make more money.
That's very well put. So Jerry, you're coming into this market from Asia. What's your angle?
I would love to share my experience on this because I come from Australia. As Lovely Hotels is based in Sydney, headquarters. Australia, I would say, probably is the most competitive fee structure in the world from all of the brands. And we're talking about typical HMA base fee sometimes come down to 1%. And then it's one of the questions, like every single time I meet with the owner say, well, why would I pay you? Because it's a lot cheaper if I go with a brand as HMI. So early days, I question myself all the time as well, is this the right business I enter into? So 2 years ago, or actually 3 years by now, I went to the States, visited all of the industry giants, including Davidson Hospitality Group, Inbridge, and all of the brands as well. And one thing I still remember today, when I questioned the same question the chairman of THINC Hospitality, and he said, look, I tell my owner simply, this is your investment cost. Yes, you do need to pay more. We're talking about 1% base or 2% on top line. In return, we're talking about, like what Bani said, 10 to 15% more on GOP. So you're actually paying a very small as investment, you're getting a lot more on return. And one of the example I remember, that was his flagship. He said from one brand in particular, since he took over, he increased GOP by 20%.
So I'm going to move us off the fees because I can take a hint. We don't just want to talk about the fees. So I think there are benefits on the fee structure. We've heard that, and on the cost savings. But there's also, of course, the comparison. Look, I have one client who says, how come they think they can operate a hotel better than Marriott? You know, Marriott been in business for, such a long time. They have thousands of hotels, Why on earth, do these people think they know better? So what is it that white label managers offer that big brands don't offer? I'm going to start with Greg because he hasn't said anything.
Thank you. So just by way of background, I joined UHM a little over a year ago from Ambridge, which is the world's largest third-party or white label manager. And what I learned was bigger doesn't mean better. Better means better, right? So how are white label managers better than the brand operators? I think Benny said it best. We don't have to be, it's not that we're better, it's that we're different, and we focus on different things, which gives you a better answer in the end, right? It's not about the fees and we'll improve the GOP and we'll improve the NOI or the EBITDA, because if we don't, then we wouldn't exist. I mean, why, if you could go to Marriott or Hilton or Hyatt or IHG or any brand and you got the exact same results, then there wouldn't be any need for white label operators. But the reason we exist is we focus on different things and we don't ultimately answer to the brand, because you said it best earlier. If you have a GM, and that person ultimately reports into the brand, are they really going to question all the fees? Of course not. That's who they work for. But if you work for a white label operator, then you're going to always challenge every little fee, every little expense, every little assumption, and those add up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation. And then I've also heard a lot about the specialist regional knowledge that white label operators can bring to the table when you're operating in the Middle East, or you're operating in Africa, or you're operating in Spain or Germany. The conditions are different with staff, with suppliers, with a load of things where maybe one fits all is not the answer. So, maybe ask Tapan, how do you tackle that in your business?
We are in the people business, and we were in a session earlier where there was a conversation around AI. Is there going to be an AI hotel one day where you don't need people at all? Maybe there would be, an accommodation where everything is run by AI. But till that happens, we are in the people business where we hire the right talent, train the right talent, and deliver service and culture to the clients who are coming in. So it is all about understanding what the local regulations are, local talent is, developing that talent, giving them or empowering them to take decisions, but at the same time ensuring that the results are achieved. We as an entity, we have always gone into markets, new markets, and we've hired the right talent from within that market that understands that, coach them, guide them, train them, spend a lot of time, and make sure the results are produced. It's not that the Marriotts and Wyndham can't do it or IHG can't do it. Of course they can, and they do in the luxury space. They continue to operate assets, in the luxury space. We're seeing some amount of franchise come in luxury, but it hasn't really captured anyone's fancy yet, but it will. So they can operate, but like everybody's been saying on the panel, we just focus on things very differently. We try and bring scale even in a boutique asset so that owner can benefit, and we run the assets as per the local markets and nuances. So that is what we bring to the table.
I'm going to ask Panos here because he's the only one who isn't a white label operator. from your brand perspective, how are the relationships working with white label operators?
But sorry for interrupting, but he is. They are the largest franchisers in the world. So he's completely pro us.
But he doesn't operate, right? He franchises and it works
I'm
with you
outnumbered. I
guys.
have to be very cautious here, because there's a backstage when we leave. So, no, we work. First of all, we work with 3 entities here already. And what I always say, and what I always tell the team, it's all about looking at the needs of the property and doing the best for the owner. Because if we don't do this, we don't have owners. We will not have owners. So we work with all groups. To me, it's about understanding the needs of the asset and always running as if it's your money. If you do this, whether you're a white label operator or an international brand, if you are able to do this, then this basically satisfies the owner, satisfies the asset needs, and creates returns for investment for everybody.
So Jerry, Australia is a huge franchise market, right? So I'm sure you work in Australia with some of the big branded franchisors as white label manager. Would you agree with what's being said?
Absolutely. Actually, Australia is still at its infancy, I would say, for the franchise model. Probably only started from the COVID time, past couple of years. I think the proposition for us, simple enough, we focus on what we do, but one thing I would like to highlight is the culture of transparency probably is the most compelling. Brand is very important to us. We leverage on brands proposition, their great sales marketing, so we can better focus on the owner's assets, we better look after the assets, we better look after our staff, and also the guests in order to increase the guest satisfaction scores, and all of this results in better EBITDA. I think that's our proposition, which makes a huge difference.
Let's talk about better EBITDA. So I think the focus here is on the cost savings, right? That you guys bring in partnership with the brand and the franchise. So specifically on the cost savings, maybe I'll turn to you again, Bani. How do you give the owner these cost savings? What is it you look at, presumably in some detail?
Sure. There are different layers. The first, by signing with the brand, you have to understand that we're already benefiting. So people talk about fees, additional fees, but at the same time we're benefiting from economies of scale that come through the brand system with regards to, for example, OTAs, commissions. In some instances, and this is where it becomes very interesting, procurement. So we pick and choose what works for us as an operator of that asset. The big difference is that, when you have the brand managing, there is a slight conflict of interests. The brand is working for the brand first, that's the priority. So whatever comes from the brand is a given, it has to be applied irrespective of the market, irrespective of the hotel. So this is the first layer, where we start picking and choosing what are the beneficial advantages that the brand can give us that can help us generate a higher EBITDA, whether it's on the procurement side, whether sometimes at the IT, and various other things. The second aspect is the payroll is very different. Not that we just pay differently, again, not less. We incentivize differently. We don't have to abide by global salary grids and benefits. Not to name, but some of the brands, they give their general managers stock options at the expense of the owner, of course. So they're basically making the general manager loyal to the brand at the expense of the owner, which is something. So all of these for us. Then the procurement itself, the day-to-day procurement. In a hotel, people don't realize, but because you're dealing with volumes, every dollar, every penny counts. So we really focus on the procurement aspect as well, on the daily purchases as well. We work a lot with our owners on this aspect. Many of our owners, especially in this region, the Middle East and Africa, many of them have a trading background. And they know, we tell them very openly, you know more than us, you know the tricks, teach us, tell us where to go, tell us who do you have existing relationships with. Because at the end of the day, every dollar they can help me save will make more incentive fee for me. So These are the three on the expense side. These are the three layers that I would say are the big ones. Obviously.
I mean, procurement is always a big topic in franchising. To what extent the franchisor should be allowed to tell the owner where they have to buy stuff. You know, where, as you rightly said, it's brand essential, then it's probably got to be bought from the brand or its nominated supplier. But if it's chairs and carpets and light fittings, then typically it has to be of a certain quality standard, and then it should be bought where it's the cheapest. I mean, feel free to disagree with me, but that would be my view.
Very importantly, every dollar spent less as an investment increases the return, right? So I think capex investment in a franchise is proven to be lesser than a managed asset, and hence if we can help the owners through this development cycle on a brownfield, greenfield conversion, probably Greg can talk about conversion. They've taken on an asset which has gone through a conversion. There is a property improvement plan in place with the brand, which is very different in a franchise scenario than in a managed scenario. So that initial dollar that you save as an owner, as an investor, when you're building an asset in a franchise model, is significantly contributes to your return profile in the years ahead.
It is, I would say, Babette, it's very important for the brands to remain flexible in terms of the development period, if you want, and the brand standards. So what we do, for example, ourselves, we'll provide the brand standards, we'll provide the specifications, but then we'll leave it to the owners to choose whether they will buy, let's say, the specific FF&E, whether it's let's say, a Greek supplier, or a Turkish supplier, or a Chinese supplier. We'll just provide the specifications. We'll have a list of preferred suppliers in case the owners wish to use them, but that remains a decision that the owners will need to make. And indeed, as Bani said, and Tapan, the payroll, so salaries and related expenses, is one of the most considerable operating costs for a hotel. So it's very, very important, instead of working with global, let's say, ratios and comparative matrices, to look at the needs of the property and the specific needs of the asset in terms of, let's say, the property fact sheet, number of restaurants, positioning, competitive sets, and make the right decisions that will create the best results. So flexibility is required there, and accommodating the needs of the specific property.
That kind of leads us also to the question of the capex, right, and how it is spent. So the hotel is operated by a big brand. I've often heard owners saying, oh, they want me to spend more money than I would like to spend, and I'm not always sure of the return on investment. In the franchise model, yes, of course, there's still a requirement to follow brand standards, but will they terminate you if you have the wrong color carpet? I don't think so. So it's also a matter of looking at each item a little bit critically and balancing the financial need with the brand standards. So, Greg is not going to invite you to...
Right, because every PEP is really a wish list from the brand that says, here's all the things that I would like for you to do over a period of time. Well, within that list of everything that needs to be done or should be done, there are certain items that have more value, more long-term return for the brand than for the owner. To your point, whether it's the carpet or what, there's certain things where if you do exactly as they say, you as the owner might not get any more return out of a specific type of carpet, but the brand is able to say, well, I've got this consistency all the way across. So part of our job as the manager is to say, okay, here are the absolutes that we'll do this year. Here's what we think we can push to next year, and here's where we think we can work with the brands, right, to find the happy medium, which translates to savings.
And I think even on a conversion in a franchise, you now see not a PIP that has to be fully implemented before the hotel can open, but instead phasing, right? Phase 1 before the brand can go up on the door. Phase 2 to get maybe an incentivization on the franchise fee and so on. So this is probably another benefit.
Yeah, and there again, flexibility is extremely important. So for us, being an American group, we follow the NFPA Fire Life Safety Code. So fire life safety is the #1 necessity when we're looking at the conversion of an operational property. The The second priority thereafter is wear and tear. So if you walk around the property, there shouldn't be cracks in the breaks, openings, penetrations, things peeling off, etc. And then you can look at look and feel and brand standards. And typically what we do with, when we look at, let's say, onboarding an operational property, we will create a phasing development, as you said, Babette, where fire life safety, wear and tear will be prior to branding. And then we would look at the infusion of the brand DNA gradually within 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, etc., depending on the condition of the property. So that flexibility is very much required with conversions especially.
Just to add to that, Babette, very important to talk about what's the difference in management and franchise when you do CapEx is the back of the house areas in a franchise model are completely determined, designed, and executed by operators. So the brands typically in a franchise do not get involved in what's the office space they need, what's the kitchen size they need. It is up to the operator, which in this case is us, helping the owners determine what's the right methodology. If the kitchen has to be geared up and prepared for a cloud kitchen concept, it's very easy to plan it and execute it as an operator on a franchise model and leverage the additional space that you may have. But if that's not the way one wants to operate, and the kitchen needs to be only a satellite kitchen because a larger kitchen is sitting off-site, that's also doable in a franchise model. So that is where optimum utilization of space, creation of revenue generating areas within the asset space or that volume are, again, enhancing owner returns.
If I may, and then if I'm talking too much, you can tell me. What we do on the technical services front, whether it's franchise or management contract, we will provide the services. We will look at the back of the house, because if let's say the stores, the delivery is on the left-hand side and the restaurant is on the right-hand side, and there is possibility for contamination from a hygiene perspective or delay in terms of serving, etc., it will create complaints.
Then you have the wrong operator, Panos. Then you have the wrong operator. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah. So we do look at the whole, let's say, design of the property, even on the franchise contract.
I mean, what we're saying is you have hard brand standards, right, that go to fire life safety, where also the brand would be liable if they let someone do terrible things like that. And then we have others, that are maybe...
A very, very practical example that we faced not so long ago with one of the major brands, talking about back of the house. They wanted in the IT room where the server is to have a clear 2.5 meters around the server, clear. And so, which is a massive waste of space, right?
Why?
And you say, why? Well, it's written in the standards, we have to, but okay, but can you give me an explanation? Well, the operator needs to be moved freely, and then we got it down to, when we got the experts of fire and life safety, we got it down to 1.2, 1.3 meters. So when you add things like this on the development costs, it starts becoming really interesting. And the other thing, which I think we didn't mention on the expenses, it just came to me, which all of us do around the panel here, is the economies of scale that we provide for our owners. I know Valor does it in Dubai, we do it in Dubai as well, where we are clustering functions, services between hotels, and not necessarily the same brands or the same groups. So in Dubai we have a Marriott Marquis and we have a Hilton, and we have clustered services for both of these. So I have one director.
Probably not the marketing, but maybe the laundry.
Well, director of finance, human resources, procurement, and a massive, even the sales team to a large extent is clustered. And we do this in Dubai, we do this in Africa, across multiple brands and hotels, and sometimes on a regional level. So, when you have a hotel of 150 rooms in Africa, let's say, you cannot have a revenue manager. It is very expensive. But then when you cluster it, then you are giving the owner this benefit with a very reduced cost and a direct return on his investment.
That's an excellent benefit of franchising. And so get the Yas Plaza hotels and converted them to franchise. That was also the first topic, was to cluster. Oh, you cannot cluster the laundry. Why not? Because one sheet has one brand written on it. Yeah, of course you have to have the clustering. And I think, Greg, you were the one when we met and prepared who said that there's also, when they pick the hotel, the picking through the shopping list of the brand to look at do I really need to have every single item on that wish list, or can I negotiate the pay?
And that's where, if you've negotiated multiple PIPs with multiple brands, then you add value to the process, right? Especially if you're a first-time hotel owner or someone who doesn't have the 30, 40, 50 years of experience with multiple brands, to be able to say, these are the things I've been able to get some concessions on or some movement on in the past, and this is where I'm going to push. And if you're a multi-unit manager, you've got more leverage than a single asset owner when you're talking to the big brands. But to Bani's point earlier, you could have 3 hotels all in a row. Could be the same owner, could be 3 different owners, but they would be 3 different brands. If each one of those was brand managed, then you would have 3 times the number of positions versus 1 manager for all 3 different brands. So the cluster, there are definitely significant benefits to clustering. We do it here in Dubai, we do it in Europe, and to Bani's point, it could be accounting, tax, treasury, finance, any number of functions.
Yeah, which could add cost otherwise, I see that. Now we've heard a lot about the benefits. We can get from the franchise with white level models, so I'm just going to be provocative here and say, so, put your money where your mouth is. So what are you guys doing in terms of performance standards? Do you offer performance termination, and on what terms? Does anybody offer any guarantees of any kind? Just throw it open. Who wants to go first? Jerry, you know?
Jerry, you're not from the region, go ahead. We're not going to answer this.
Whenever we look at the project, the first thing actually we say is whether we can create enough value, we can add on value to the project. If the value add is enough, another day we believe everyone would be happy. Otherwise, there would be conflict. Number 1. Number 2, in order to give the owner comfort, yes, we look at performance test and performance guarantee essential to a certain extent, because another day, majority of our fees actually comes from incentive. So if the hotel is not performing, we're not happy about it as well, because we wouldn't be beneficial out of it. And also considering, we don't have our brands here, it's not our brand, we have the operator. And the fee earning we have actually is quite minimum compared to the brands. So most of the time we do not offer guarantee, but for key locations, if we desperate to get into the market from time to time, yes, we do look at.
That's interesting. So how about performance termination?
All I can tell you, Babette, is that we are probably the most creative people in the room when it comes to contracting. We will put the marketeers to shame on how we structure our contracts sometimes, because every owner's need is different. We've got owners who would say to us, we need a 15-year contract, because that is how long I want you to take care of my asset. There would be others who say that, look, I have ambitions to make my own management company when I have reached 11 hotels of my own brand, and hence can you give me a shorter duration? By all means, because we believe that if we've done a really good performance, which is better than market average, and which is giving the owners the right return profile over the holding period, then why would they want to change the operator? They would just renew our contract. So we are quite creative. Performance test is one component of it. Control, is a very important component of it. Signing the checks, whether you want to sign the checks, release the payment, get the points on the salaries that are paid out from your credit card or your bank account. All that is doable when you're working with us. So many advantages. And you are the specialist. You do the contracting on the other side many a times. So.
Yes, and I like the idea of shorter contracts. I think it's very elegant, because performance termination, quite honestly, is not great, right? It causes a lot of dispute. There's a lot of argument over, is it to test, is it and or? We've heard all that yesterday. Can you even fail it if in only abysmal underperformance is failure to perform, and then it can be cured by paying the tiny difference between terrible performance and not quite so terrible performance. So it's really, I personally don't think it's a good solution. I really like just a shorter contract, like we heard there, okay? if you don't like us anymore, then there comes a point in time when the contract will expire. So maybe that is a better way forward, in my opinion. Feel free to disagree, of course. You're all very experienced people.
Well, like if I may add on, I believe we are flexible in terms of the contract because we don't carry the flag for the location, so it's less damage to us even if we need to move on. But I always say one thing to the owner: you don't want to work with somebody if they only want to stay with you for a very short period of time. And in order for us to put more efforts to work for you, look after your assets, we need to have certain comfort as well. So the tenure is very important out of it. We're happy to build certain clauses around it, like performance test, essential. If you win, I win. If you don't win, we shouldn't win. But tenure, for our region, typically I look at 5 to 10 years as bare minimum. Like in some instance, take example, last year, I said no to certain contracts as the owner just wanted to give us for 1 year. The reason is, I love the assets, but I don't believe we can add on enough value in a very short period of time.
1 year sounds a bit short. I think the shortest I typically see has been 5 and 10, but Panos was also interesting. You were saying your franchise agreements are also shorter than management agreements would be.
With us, at this time of today's world, the 20-year agreements are extremely few to non-existent. The average contract is 15 years. We're happy to extend a 10-year contract, and typically we do this when there is a white label operator where more flexibility on the contract term is required, or where the property is, for example, leased. But at the end of the day, Babette, it's about satisfying needs, because no business can survive without addressing the needs of the market, the needs of your customer. If the customer is the owner, and the owner wants a management contract, we'll extend the management contract. If they want a franchise, it will be franchise. If they want a franchise, management flipping into franchise, we will do. And if they want something that I call frontman, so franchise flipping into management, because you engage with the owner, they'll tell you, I will build the structure, I will get a white label management company, but that doesn't happen, for example, then the option is there, if things don't work, to convert that into a management contract. So it's about satisfying needs, and I think, and for us, 10 years, the typical lowest, let's say, contract in duration that we have these days.
And it's also about the relationship between the players, isn't it? It's not just about, I think it's a very good confident gesture to say, I'll give you a shorter term contract, you'll love me so much, you're not going to terminate me. It's also about playing that relationship between the brand, the owner, and the white label manager. The whole brand relations piece can get quite tough when there's just the owner and the brand manager. So what I've heard you all say is you have a strong role to play on brand relation. I know, Greg, I think it's one of your points that you can add a lot of value there.
So, I mean, the brands are important. They're why we exist, right? That's where we get most of our pipeline from. So we have to be both proactive and reactive, right? So you want a great relationship with the brands because you're helping them grow their brands, and they're helping you grow your management company. So it's a very good relationship where both parties benefit, right? Most of our management contracts today, the majority of our contracts today are with hotels that our parent company owns. So we have very long-term contracts. They're on the one hand, but on the other hand, they're also terminable at any time. Because if our owner doesn't like what we're doing, he can go hire anyone else to manage the hotels. So for us, it's about flexibility. You said earlier, it's about, well, what does the owner want? Is the owner looking for a 15-year contract, a 5-year contract, a franchise? That's the key. You have to be flexible and you have to add value.
And the other point is you mainly work for one owner, so you are their management platform. That is, of course, a solution that some of the big owners have chosen. Is a big investment as well, and the question is at what point to make that. So that needs to be considered carefully. I think a small number of hotels have heard people being disappointed with the outcome. I don't know if anyone has a view on how many hotels there should be, but certainly more than a handful.
Before we move on to that, you asked a question around guarantees and which Jerry had touched upon. But you know, when it comes to contracting with the third-party operating company or independent hotel operators like us, we are more than willing to sit down on the table and understand what is the investment that's gone into the asset. Why is the owner seeking certain amount of returns? Is it a debt payment that needs to go out before you know, they incentivize the operator to achieve profit levels? So we are willing to have that conversation. We sit around the table, and in many cases, owner priority returns come into play for the duration of the holding period or payoff period of the debt. And once the debt is paid off, then the OPRs, as we call them, go off, and a GOP linked incentive kicks in. So all these are, you know, modules available to ensure that we have skin in the game. We may not be putting capital in upfront, but we are putting our reputation at risk, and we are, you know, literally maybe 60 to 65% of our fee comes in from incentives. So we have skin in the game in that sense. Just to tackle that question before.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. That makes me think that in Europe we have more and more management companies that take an equity stake in the asset. They find the asset together with the investor, they put some equity in, and they bring the operating expertise. So I think the whole space of franchising with or without equity partners is really growing and expanding. I'm sure it will be successful in this region as well, and that's why we're sitting here and having such an interesting debate about the topic. One point which I'd like to make from my perspective, coming from a legal background originally, is that owners often don't negotiate enough, particularly on the franchise agreement. Sorry, Panos, but often we see the agreement as just being signed with just a negotiation on the fees. That's it, you know. People don't even look at the termination options. A lot of franchise agreements are non-terminable. You know, it's basically you're in it for the 10 or 20 years and you've signed up to. So I think there's also a role that a good white label manager, an experienced asset management partner can play, helping owners understand where to sit between making ridiculous demands that can never be agreed, asking for what is becoming, you know, reasonable in the market.
We actually, that's a very good point, and this is, for us at Aleph, this is the first service we provide our hotel owners, advising, first of all, do we need a brand, yes or no? In some cases, you don't even need a brand at some locations for some assets. And two, if we need a brand, then we run on behalf of the owner, free of charge, because I have a vested interest in doing so, we run an RFP process and we call for brand offers. And we negotiate the fees, obviously, but we take it forward, negotiating the full franchise agreement. There's one trend. It's not fully adopted in the region yet, but in Europe it's making its way. It is, even under a franchise agreement, having the royalty fee linked to the delivery system of the brand. It's a bit difficult yet in the region. We've tried it, but obviously it's going to come one day or another. And the rationale behind it is, listen, if I'm paying your royalty because you're promising me your name, your brand awareness, loyalty program, etc., with so much distribution system that you're going to bring to me, well, you have to prove it and you have to live up to the expectation, which is very similar to an operator being incentivized on an OPR or a GOP.
Yeah, I agree. It comes and goes. You know, in the early days, when all the American brands were first coming into Europe, this was the common model. Franchise fees on incremental revenue, that's over. Now, you know, we live in a different world, but maybe in a very competitive world where, you know, one has to differentiate through these types of deals.
But just to add to, you know, what Bani just said and your question, we actually advise the owner that investment in a good lawyer and a good consultant who is an expert in you know, negotiating a franchise agreement is very important, because many a times these franchise agreements are very prototypical, very standard. However, there are nuances between every contract of different companies, you know, where there is margin of negotiation available. So third-party operators are not the muscle in the room to fight on behalf of the owner, We are there to help the owners, but it is also advisable that they had the right lawyers and the advisory team that has experience in negotiating such contracts, because then they can unlock value upfront again for a relationship they're going to be in for 15-20 years or more.
Yeah, I mean, my secret tip would be at the term sheet stage, try to get more than just financial concessions. Yes, financial for sure. Yeah, everybody focuses on that, but make sure your AOP, your protected area, is in there where it says how near to your hotel can another branded hotel be opened and how long is that waiting period. Maybe not quite so relevant in many countries of this region, withholding taxes can be a big topic in Africa, for example. If the owner has to gross up the fees because there's a 20% government deduction, that's actually 20% more fees for you because you're not going to get that money back. Those are things you can get at the term sheet stage that are very difficult to negotiate once it's lawyers to lawyers. So I'm just looking at the time and we're down to the last 5 minutes. We said we would allow questions because I thought it was a shame, some really interesting debates earlier where I had questions and we were sort of a bit up against it. So I wanted to throw it up for questions from the audience. If anyone would like to ask us, there's a question there. Okay. Oh my God, I can't read that very well. What are the primary concerns owners have regarding franchising? Wow. Okay, big question.
Panos should take that on because he gets that question all the time.
The primary concerns owners have regarding franchising. So it's very important for us to make sure that the owner has the structure, if we give the franchise, to be able to deliver the service. So for us it's very, very important to start with good technical services, so the right product is on the ground, and then subsequently, once the franchise, the operational stage comes in, that the right team is on the ground. We're always happy to work with white label operators. If that's not a choice of the owner, that he doesn't want, let's say, to work with a white label operator, then we are trying to make sure that the right team is on the ground. And we actually have GM approval rights for franchise properties to ensure that at least there is a main point of contact there that we can work and we can basically collaborate to make sure that the franchise delivery can actually take effect.
I think that goes right to the
question
point.
is, sorry, and the question is what the owners' concerns are. And again, from my experience, the owners' concern when they want to deal with a potential franchisors is the first thing. The brand awareness, credibility, does it fit with their asset? And the second major concern, which is the most important one, is the brand delivery. What am I paying for? And these are the two, of course, then there are many other, but these are the main two.
What I often hear, particularly in this region, which has been so strong on a management model for so long, is also why do you think you can operate a Marriott better than Marriott? That is often the first question. Is their brand been there forever? I mean, I think we kind of covered it, but it is one of the big questions.
Obviously Wyndham is one of the largest franchisors, but people don't realize Marriott's portfolio globally. I don't know if there are Marriott people in the room, they will correct me, but I think it's 78% franchised, something higher, 82, 77. Okay, well, so that's Marriott. I think the smallest franchisor is Accor in the 50s, but Hilton is in the high 80s. IHG is in the 90s as well. So these companies are actually, they're not operators, they're mostly franchisors. I mean, talking about Ambridge manages more Marriott than Marriott. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just in the region here, historically, it's been more a management culture, which in the last few years it has changed tremendously. But otherwise, but again, I repeat what I said at the beginning, we don't manage better. We manage differently. This is a big nuance.
I think another question of the owners normally ask is, well, like, when they deal with Marriott, IHJ, or Accor, they are all listed company, right? Like, when they deal with us, you know, we all, you know, probably under 10 years old, and we're public owned and not really listed. So where's the comfort? You know, like, how about you? We're dealing with you today, and tomorrow you're gonna be gone. So I would say, well, like, take ourselves example. Now, lots of good hoteliers joining us. Take example, our CEO Marcus Hanna used to be the head of VP operations for Accor to manage all of the Sofitel and gallery of the luxury hotels in Pacific. Our CFO Priscilla Chen used to be on the board of Accor Invest for Pacific, managing $2 billion assets, for example, as a director. So, like, with all of these reputable hoteliers joining us, there are more comfort, I would say, to give to the owner. But also from the other side, for example, I was involved in one of the acquisitions in the States back in 2019. And when you did operator select, at that time, I recall there were hundreds of third-party hotel operators, basically. And if we're talking about this market, like look at the Middle East, I'm new to the market, but you know, it's limited suppliers here. So I would say the more companies like ourselves being established in the market, the more comfort we can give to our owners.
I'm just gonna throw it open one more time because there was someone in the audience wanting to ask. There are more written questions here, but they're kind of on topics we discussed already. So I'm gonna ask you. Do you wanna ask your question? Go ahead.
How would the third-party hotel operator add value to the pre-opening phase of the hotel? Because that's also an investment from an owner's perspective. So would the third-party hotel operator try and shorten that pre-opening period, or how would they optimize cost during this phase of development?
I'll let someone else. I'm a
family,
so I cannot
answer.
Fight each other for.
Greg, you want to?
I think we're all going to say the same thing. So it depends on the location, the brand, if that operator has other properties in that market, but absolutely can add value in terms of shortening, in terms of when you hire people, who you hire, where and if you can share resources, right? Because opening a hotel could take a very long period of time if you don't already have boots on the ground, and already have infrastructure in place. So definitely a third-party operator can help reduce the cost there, but please.
I mean, of course, it's the time, it's the type, the pre-opening timeline, one. Two, it's the type of expenses as well. Again, it's not like the full menu that we go with, because this is what, you know, the brand standard says that the pre-opening, how the pre-opening should be done. It's customized for that specific hotel, for that specific owner, etc. Just to give you an example, from a numerical point of view, or we have on 2 or 3 occasions delivered a pre-opening budget 50% of what the brand said that it would cost. So, which is a very, significant saving on a pre-opening budget.
Just to add, we are more than happy to provide commercial services for pre-opening off-site. We don't necessarily need a commercial director to be hired on the property, which is often the case when a brand is managing it. And hence, because we can do off-site commercial establishment work, which includes creating the shell, listing, website, OTA, etc., all can be got ready from our office, from the region or in a cluster. Yes, it really shortens the period that you need, key personnel, as we call them, on site. So it helps.
Babette, I would say good project management relates a lot with good project management, good collaboration with the owner, establishing proper timelines for development and opening, relevant and realistic.
Yeah. And I see here it says time is up. Thank you so much. You've been a good panel, very fair play.